Good evening, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Jay Johnson Show, The Prompt. I'm your host, Jay Johnson, and tonight we're tackling one of the most urgent questions facing higher education. How do we respond to artificial intelligence? My research paper is called Beyond the Fear, Dismantling AI Adoption Paralysis Through Research. What I've discovered this semester is that higher education is stuck, paralyzed by fear, and that paralysis is actually doing more harm than the technology itself. Over the next 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to show you what's causing that paralysis and why it's a problem, and most importantly, what we can do about it using real evidence from our very own Wilmington University's research. We'll hear from two experts in the field, Dr. Walker, our own Dean of the Philosophy Department here at Wilmington University, and we'll also hear from Dr. Edru Branch, who is a technology executive and an advocate for AI adoption in the workplace in the St. Louis area. I'll walk you through the data that proves responsible AI integration isn't just possible, it's essential. So tonight's prompt, how ethical frameworks and custom AI tools can transform higher education. Let's get started. So let's start with the problem here. What higher education is paralyzed. And I don't mean that metaphorically. Institutions literally do not know what to do with AI. And here's the data that proves that this isn't just theory. The American Association of University Professors found that 71% of faculty reported uncertainties about AI policies. Think about that for a second. Nearly 3/4 of professors don't have a clear guidance on how to handle the technology. And it's not just uncertainty, it's chaos. You got inconsistent standards across institutions and even within the same university sometimes. One professor bans AI completely, the other requires it, and students have no idea what's allowed and what's needed. There's widespread confusion about what counts as cheating versus what counts as legitimate use. Is using AI to brainstorm ideas, is that okay? What about to check my grammar in my paper or to generate outlines that help me organize my thoughts? Nobody knows because there's no unified framework. And underneath all of that is this deep fear that AI is going to destroy students' ability to think critically, that we're going to create a generation of people who can't think for themselves. As Lee and colleagues documented in their 2024 review, the central challenge stems from a critical lack of unified ethical framework, resulting in widespread confusion, inconsistent standards, and significant risk to academic integrity and data privacy. That, ladies and gentlemen, is institutional paralysis, and it has real consequences. Now, why does this matter? Well, because higher education is stuck debating and banning, the professional world has already moved on. Employers expect AI proficiency. And when students graduate, they're walking into these workplaces where AI tools are standard. It's not controversial, it's not banned, but standard operating procedure. And the professional world has already embraced AI for its efficiency, its rapid information processing. It's not a question of whether AI will be used. It's already being used right now in every major industry today. But if we spent 4 years telling students don't use this, it's considered cheating, we've left them completely unprepared for that reality of the real world. They graduate without these skills to use these tools responsibly and effectively. And here's the existential threat. Higher education continues to resist what the world already adapts. We risk becoming obsolete. Students will look at universities and ask, Why am I paying and not being prepared for the real world? To quote UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Education, education has a responsibility to prepare humans to live and work with AI. Yet, when faculty members isolate themselves and from these tools due to fear or even just rigid tradition, they inadvertently isolate their students from this essential learning experience. It's not AI that threatens the legitimacy of education. It's the institutional refusal to adopt. So, why is higher education stuck in this paralysis? The answer requires understanding what we're actually dealing with. AI is what scholar Stephen Murgatroyd called destructive innovation. And I need you to understand what makes it destructive versus incremental. Destructive innovation requires fundamental restructuring of the relationships between three core elements: the faculty, the students, and the knowledge itself. These aren't surface level changes. And this is not when we switch from chalkboards to whiteboards, or even from overhead projectors, for us old enough to remember overhead projector, to PowerPoint. Those were incremental upgrades, the same pedagogy, new tools, but AI is fundamentally different. What's required is cultural transformation. The entire model of how we teach, how students learn, and how knowledge gets validated, all of this must change. And the institutions, they don't know how to manage that level of transformation. So what do? They freeze, they issue bans, they implement detection tools, and they hope that it goes away. And as my research shows, this isn't about resistant technology. It's about institutions not knowing how to restructure these fundamental educational relationships. That is paralysis. That's the root cause of the paralysis. Now, let me be clear. Faculty resistance to AI is not technophobia. It is a pedagogical disagreement based on how these tools are designed. And in our first study, Stephen Murgatroyd identified three distinct approaches to AI integration: learner as a recipient, and that's where AI tutors students behaviorally. You have learner as a collaborator. That's where AI works with the students constructively. And then you have learner as a leader, and that's where AI enables student-driven learning. But here's the problem. Most institutions AI initiatives deploy the first model, the behaviorist. And that is a banking model that Paul Freire critiqued decades ago. Basically, students receive content passively, they get tested for compliance, and then they move on to the next option. Here in the third bullet point, another point here is that faculty, professors, they spent decades constructing and building a constructive learning model where students are actively build knowledge through inquiry, collaboration, discovery. And this is research backed. This is evidence backed teaching. And here's where it creates the conflict. Institutions may deploy without even checking whether or not these tools meet the faculty's pedagogical approaches, and they just mandate adoption. And so this is where, again, in my paper, I reflect and talk to Mr. Stephen Murgatroyd's research, and it talks about identifying these three AI models and these three learners. Now, beyond the pedagogical objections, faculty resistance reflects concrete economic concerns. And these concerns are completely legitimate concerns. First, there's ongoing copyright lawsuits here in the New York Times, Getty Images, creators versus suing AI platforms for alleged copyright infringement. The legal questions about AI training data still remain unresolved as of today. And there's legitimate fears here. Faculty fear intellectual property theft, labor devaluation. If AI trained on their scholarly work without compensation or consent, then that's exploitation. If AI could generate course content, then why hire faculty? These fears aren't paranoia, they are rational responses and are actually real threats. There's also concern about work intensification and de-skilling. Faculty worry that integrating AI doesn't reduce their actual workload; it actually increases it, while simultaneously devaluing their particular expertise. And like we said earlier, all that training that they went into to learn and to develop their expertise. Again, in my paper, I quote from Stephen Murgatroyd in his research about the ongoing lawsuits of Getty Images and the individual creators and the legal uncertainties that are still out, which is compounding the faculty fears about their intellectual property and their work and the labor. And then also AI serves, again, as I spoke to, the fact that this suspicion that AI integrations will serve administrative efficiency rather than the pedagogical goals of the faculty. So, and this resistance create what researchers call a clash of values, and that clash has real consequences for students and everyone involved. AI, when institutions adopt AI reactively without the proper governance, you get a biased automated decisions with zero accountability. And faculty see this happening and they resist it because they know it's harmful. It also erodes the educational relationship that faculty value, the mentorship, the dialogue, the human connection. All of those things make learning transformative. And when AI is implemented poorly, it actually destroys that and destroys that ability to have that valued educational relationship. And then when we're talking about digital natives versus the non-traditional students, how they're both a fail. So this paralysis will fail them both. Digital natives, who are the kids now, these generations that are growing up in this AI world, right? They need to learn how to use these AI tools responsibly, skills that they're actually going to need in the workforce. And then non-traditional students, i.e. us, the adult learners, they need that efficiency and that flexibility that the learning tool will fit in their complex life. And by freezing this in institutions, they fail both groups of learners. And then ultimately, the institutional refusal to adopt threatens the educational relevance of the institution. Students will ask, as I said earlier, why am I paying for this when it's not preparing me for reality? As in the Georgieva and Stewart research, again, quote from my paper. Um, when reactive and market-driven AI adoption without the proper governance leads to a biased automated decision. So they basically talking when you institute these and enforce these mandates to adopt AI without a structure, it leads to these automatic decisions. It creates lack of accountability. It also erodes educational relationships that the faculty value. All these same points that I mentioned here were derived out of my paper from that research study. And then now what we're going to hear is we're going to take a listen from Dr. Edu Branch, who is a technology executive and a AI leader in the St. Louis region.
As someone who's worked in technology leadership in St. Louis, I see employers actively working to integrate AI into their everyday processes and operations. Most organizations are using AI as a tool to enhance work and not really replace the roles. Um, I believe what employers are really looking for are people who embraces AI, who understands it, and who want to use it to improve how they work and how they contribute in the workplace. For the new graduates, this actually creates a really strong opportunity. Many of them have grown up with technology, at the forefront, which really puts them in a good position. However, employers are looking for, they're really looking for um, those who know how to use AI beyond basic automation or scripting skills. Um, they want individuals who understand how organizations function, how people work together, how processes connect, and then also how AI can support collaborative and efficient work environments. Um, they're looking for that generative way of understanding their entire work environment. And one thing about AI is that it's not going away. It's really embedded in how we work and live. And employers, they will continue to look for graduates with that deep practical understanding of AI, and the ability to apply it thoroughly and responsibly within any organization. The advice I would give to educators who are hesitant is this: allow students to use AI technology, but allow them to use it with some structure, right? So AI, it should be treated as a learning tool, and a resource, and not something where students can really copy from verbatim, right? And when they're using it correctly, it really helps students improve the quality of their work. It helps them think more critically and also allow them to organize any complex information more efficiently, you know. So really giving the students access to AI, it provides that hands-on experience that they may need in the future workplace, especially since a lot of companies are adopting the AI technology, right? And so having that access, it gives them exposure to new ways of thinking, and it also helps them learn how to really integrate technology into how they work, right? They're familiar with it, they've used it, and so they're embracing it and understanding it more, especially with how it helps them work more efficiently. What's really important is that, having that clear framework. So the educators should have that framework that really shows students how to use AI responsibly, and to use it responsibly to support their thinking and not necessarily replace that thinking. You know, the ultimate goal really is to make sure that the students are preserving their natural knowledge and understanding, while helping them work smarter and more efficiently. And when they use it this way, when they use it in that manner, in that organized framework that the educators provide them with, AI becomes a tool. It becomes a tool for deeper thinking, faster comprehension, and more thoughtful outcomes. So you really don't get that plagiarism. You'll retain that natural knowledge that the students gain, and those are some things that will really help educators as they allow the students to use the AI technology. From a leadership and organizational perspective, I really believe institutions need to integrate AI into everyday learning, right? And they should really focus on preparing these students for how the work actually happens today with AI integrated. Most companies today, they're actually using AI to fix code, to analyze how people work together, and then also how to capture data that humans may miss, right? And so I think institutions should really reflect this reality, right? AI should really be built into the learning systems. It should really be built into the course materials, because when the students are using AI regularly on a regular basis, the students become more comfortable with it, right? And then they begin to see it more so as a tool rather than as a threat. I mean, we've seen it before, right? We've seen it before with technology. We've moved from terminals. I don't know if you are familiar with the terminals that were computers before, but we moved to regular desktop computers, and we went to laptops, more mobile. We went to tablets, even smaller than what we had before. And then, there you go. We have smartphones now. And each of those changes have been really disruptive for us at first, but it became normal over time. It became normal over time. And so I believe that institutions should begin to create assignments that require the students to collaborate more with AI and not really depend on it. And it may give students the opportunity to learn how to think, how to decide, and how to work alongside of AI. Because, once they get into these workplaces, they're going to have to learn how to work alongside of AI. Again, everything is not manual anymore. And then finally, AI should really be treated as a core skill. So think about it, having that AI as a general skill, right? Especially since it's embedded in how we work today. You should have that human and AI collaboration that's going to be a part of the workplace now. That's how we work today. It's how I work today, And so I think the schools and institutions should really prepare students to use AI confidently. And when I say confidently, that's in a way that they really truly understand it, they embrace it, they don't see it as a threat anymore, and then they look at the use of AI as a responsible way of enhancing their ability to work more efficiently.
Thank you, Dr. Branch. Excellent commentary, and thank you for bringing those points forward. There's really good points about how AI is impacting the real world here. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the first major fear driving this paralysis. And that fear is that AI will replace critical thinking. Educators are genuinely worried about this, and I want to acknowledge that. I want to acknowledge that these are actual legitimate concerns. They worry students will just outsource their thinking and to the machine. Why struggle through a difficult concept when ChatGPT can explain it instantly and analyze a text when AI can summarize it? They fear the over-reliance on the technology will diminish students' analytical and critical thinking skills, and that we're going to create a generation that can't think without a digital crutch. Also, and then there's the recognition that learning requires an actual cognitive struggle when you're wrestling with a difficult concept, when you're stuck on a problem. That's when real learning happens, and AI threatens to remove that productive struggle. And then there is this study. There's a study that Lee and the researchers have did in 2024, where they found that of 96% of the researchers that they queried identified harm to critical thinking as their primary concern about AI education. And that is the worry, because when AI is designed correctly, though, and not as an answer generation, but as a coaching tool, that's where the research shows something completely different. Custom AI tools can't actually enhance critical thinking. Now, looking at the research of our very own Wilmington University's Willo pilot program, and that study led by Dr. Walker, who we will hear from later on here, of 123 students using Willo as a revision coach, they achieved a 10-point improvement per assignment. We're not talking about 1 or 2 points, we're talking about a 10-point improvement. And when you look at that, that's 30 points across 3 assignments with a 95% confidence interval between 25 and 35 points. So this isn't a random variation. These improvements are statistically reliable and replicatable. But here's what's crucial. These gains weren't distributed randomly. They were specifically concentrated in three measurable critical thinking dimensions. One, strengthening evidence. Students learn to replace weak arguments and weak support with relevant sources. And then handling counter arguments, students surface opposing views and crafted reasoned rebuttals. And then also tightening logic, where students identify their own assumptions and ensure that their claims align with their reasoning. So we're seeing actual improvements using a AI coaching tool properly. And that is what makes the whole difference. Willo wasn't designed to write papers for students or to give them the answers. It was designed as an immediate coaching tool that not answers, but that asks questions and prompts reflection, that guides revisions, and it doesn't replace student thought. It actually scaffolds it. So that collaborative, that I call it the pocket tutor, it shows that critical thinking was actually improved, not harmed, as the fears outlined in the previous year. And then also here, the quote from Dr. Walker's research that directly shows and demonstrates students who engage with custom AI assistant Willo for revisions achieve all of these points here, that improvement. And rather than replacing critical thinking, the tool actually provided on-demand coaching that kept students engaged in high-level analysis directly from Dr. Walker and his research. And actually, we're going to hear from Dr. Walker directly about his program and about his AI tool and his research.
Hi, I'm Danny Walker, professor at Wilmington University and chair of philosophy and arts in the College of Education and Liberal Arts. I first became aware of generative AI in late fall of 2022 from reading articles and news reports about OpenAI, a company that made ChatGPT available to the public for free on November 30th of that year. I was fascinated by what I read about it, so along with literally 5 million other people, I signed up for it in the next week and began to try it out. I was shocked by how well it conversed and by its breadth of knowledge on just about any subject. So by early spring of 2023, I was trying it out in my assignments in a course I teach in my department, Introduction to Critical Thinking. I was struck by how easily it could do the work. It could write solid, well-structured essays on the very topics my students were being graded on and do it instantly. Two issues elevated this to what eventually became a crisis in education. It was free to everyone, and because AI generates new content every time it writes, it means traditional tools used to detect plagiarism in student writing no longer worked. But despite my initial concerns about that, about its misuse, I was so impressed by its capabilities. I wanted to explore how it could harness this powerful technology. So I began some experiments with models like ChatGPT and Copilot. And again, I was blown away by their capabilities. I decided to see if I could design something that would leverage AI strengths to enhance education rather than just fighting against its use. So I discovered that if ChatGPT had access to the directions and rubrics for an assignment, it could evaluate the student's work and give good feedback to the student on how to improve their writing assignments. However, I struggled with applying it in the classroom because of the early versions of generative AI were somewhat limited in what they could provide, and they weren't practical for scaling, especially for large classrooms of online students. I mean, after all, this is still a brand new technology at that point. But everything changed again in March of 2024 when OpenAI did two things. Number one, they rolled out a new and much more capable model, ChatGPT 4, and they made it free to everyone. But most importantly, they created a GPT builder, a relatively easy way to make a custom version of ChatGPT for a specific topic or course or whatever. So I immediately thought of its use in courses. With a custom GPT, instead of just using the generic ChatGPT, I was able to preload all of the assignments and rubrics and create a very specific prompt that would govern the GPT's behavior and how it interacted with students. And with the model's capabilities, I could adjust it so that privacy was protected and the information was kept within the course. So I built the Phi 100 Feedback Assistant. Students and instructors had free access to it. It provided very solid feedback to students on how to improve their assignments. Even gave a preliminary grade based on the rubric criteria. And very importantly, it also created a chat history that instructors could see, which was an essential part of their responsibility in assessing student work. So we eventually named this assistant Willo, branding it for our university. After piloting it and testing it, the results were so good, we made it available to all sections of the course. And that's several hundred students. The teachers and students loved it. And when we collected data on it, the results demonstrated not only their approval of using it, but solid learning gains, not just in overall grades, but in specific dimensions of critical thinking. We did face one major challenge, though, that using the feedback assistant alone couldn't solve for us. Even when students had the assignments, directions, and were encouraged to get feedback through Willo, the temptation to use generative AI to write the essay for them was often too strong. And as students became more comfortable with these tools, misuse increased, sometimes intentionally, and sometimes because students genuinely thought they were using AI in an acceptable, collaborative way, but really didn't know where the line was. At the same time, instructors didn't yet have a clear way to guide them. So our first response was sort of reflexive. We tried to rely on AI detection tools like Turnitin, but those tools were inconsistent and pushed instructors into the role of being digital detectives. And while students were at the same time learning how to evade detection through humanizing prompts and advice they found online, and it quickly became an arms race, one that we were still dealing with into the fall of this year. Even as detection tools improved, the bigger issue remained the same. Students were never really taught how to work with AI in a clear, structured, and academically appropriate way. It occurred to me that an answer might be to change Willo in the way that it interacted with students. Rather than letting students submit essays that were generated, either by them or by AI, into Willo, what if we turned Willo into a true learning assistant or tutor that could guide the students through the entire process of writing, step by step? This would not only guide the students to strengthen their critical thinking and writing, it would have the additional benefit of making all of that visible to the instructor and preclude the need for AI detection tools at the end, because instructors would have access to students' conversation with Willo through the entire process. So we created the Willo path, a structured step-by-step process where Willo guides students to complete their essays from start to finish. Willo serves as an instructional coach, challenging them, helping them refine their thinking, evaluating their drafts based on the rubric criteria so they can revise and improve their work. It's put together in a phased process, step by step, and students have to complete one phase before they can go to the next. So it protects their writing and prevents them from inserting pre-written things that might not be appropriate. We included safeguards like Willo cannot write for them, but will always instead prompt them using Socratic questions to formulate their own reasoning and writing. It is built on a pedagogically sound, reflective model that can be applied really to virtually any assignment. So this approach has been so successful, we're now switching over to it entirely and calling it Willo 2.0, the Willo Path. We'll be introducing it in the spring in 3 high-enrolled Gen Ed courses of over 800 students. And we're working with our AI Governance Council at our university to implement it at scale in other departments and colleges across the university. Now, I am well aware of the growing drumbeat in the media and in higher education circles claiming that AI signals the end of meaningful learning and that students are renting out their minds and bypassing the very process education is meant to cultivate. I recently read an article that went so far as to argue that the solution is to have the students shut off their screens altogether and return to handwritten assignments. But you know, that kind of reaction, although I understand the impetus behind it, it misunderstands both the scale of the problem and the reality of modern education, particularly online learning. This genie's not going back in the bottle. But what my work with Willo has shown is that the answer is not retreating from technology, but using it to redesign learning so that reasoning and reflection and intellectual effort are brought back into the classroom and into the open. When AI is structured as a guide rather than a substitute, it can strengthen thinking instead of replacing it. Willo does not generate essays or answers for the student. It asks questions. It challenges reasoning. It requires students to explain their thinking step by step. The learning stays with the student, and the AI functions more as a coach or tutor than a shortcut. This is the way we're designing Willo 2.0 to interact with students, and I am confident that it is a path that we can take with AI that will not only restore academic integrity to student writing, but it become a powerful pedagogical tool that enhances student engagement and learning and transforming higher education.
Second major fear, academic integrity. The fear that cheating will explode and we won't be able to stop it. Faculty worry that plagiarism becomes undetectable. If AI can generate A-level essays, how do we know what's genuine student work? And then there's a fundamental question that worries about ownership. Who owns AI-assisted work? If a student uses AI to brainstorm, outline, draft, revise, is that still their paper? Where do we draw the line? In traditional assessments, essays, exams, research papers are suddenly vulnerable to AI manipulation in ways we've never seen before. The ease of generating text threatens everything we thought we knew about measuring learning and the way we gauge that learning here. And then fourth, Lee's review that we mentioned earlier found that 25 of the 26 studies they found in those 25 studies, 96% of that identify academic integrity as the dominant ethical concern. And this is the other major fear paralyzing institutions. And then again, coming out of my paper here, we quote and take a deep dive into Lee and colleagues' research, and they documented that 25 of the 26 studies, again, academic integrity was that main issue. But that's what's interesting about the research. Research suggests this issue is often a symptom of a deeper pedagogical flaw rather than solely a technical one. The problem isn't just AI, right? It's what are we asking students to do? So how have institutions responded to this fear? Many have turned to detection systems, and those systems are failing spectacularly. Detection tools like Turnitin's AI detector produces high false positive rates, flagging genuine human written work as AI generated. And students are actually, they didn't do anything wrong. They're getting accused of cheating. And those false accusations, they're devastating. They damage the trust between the students and faculty. Once a student has been falsely accused, that relationship is hard to get back and may never fully recover. And more fundamentally, surveillance-based approaches presume guilt. They treat every student as a potential cheater who must prove their innocence. And that's a terrible foundation to have in education. And prohibition, just banning AI entirely, that's hard to do. This is becoming unattainable to be able to continue to do that. And I would even argue maybe even unethical. We're banning tools that are standard in the professional world and setting students up for failure upon graduation. Again, looking at the research, we can see that they identified where Turnitin is generating false positives at a higher rate than it really should be, especially after its anticipated launch, and it falsely flagged human work as AI work. Detection and prohibition aren't solutions, they're surrender. And we need a different approach entirely. But here's the critical insight. The cheating problem is often a symptom of outdated assessment, not just AI availability. Our assessments were designed for a pre-AI era. If these assignments are just generated 5-page text, wall of text, well, AI can do that instantly. Traditional essays prioritize root production over genuine thinking, so students are incentivized to use AI inappropriately. And then here's the evidence that is contested. And USA's global study, it found that 46.5 classify AI as dishonest, but 36% disagree, viewing AI as assessive technology like search engines. That's more than 1/3 who see this completely different, and the issues are actually nuanced. And then here's how Willo addressed this. Professors can review the student's AI chat log. The entire conversation is transparent. This creates partnership model where students are using the tool for coaching and professors can validate the process. It eliminates the incentive to cheat because they know the work is transparent. And prohibition is increasingly unattainable here. Banning tools that are standard in the professional world sets students up for failure upon graduation. An ethical framework that allows responsible use levels the playing field and makes the university relevant. And coming out of my paper again, as my research documented, the critical question centers around what is actually being assessed. What are we actually assessing from the student? If the goal is to evaluate cognitive thinking and understanding, then the cheated argument collapses when AI is integrated as a transparent part of the process. And in the Willo pilot, professors review that students' AI chat log, creating accountability, and that shifts the focus from a policing behavior to professional ethics. So what's the solution? We need two things working together. First, institutional AI ethical review boards. An AIERB, or an ethical review board, is a formal governance structure of a committee of faculty, administrators, students, and technology experts that creates and oversees ethical AI integration. The board will review the AI tool applications, application by application, before the institution adopts the tool. And not every AI tool is the same. They're not all created equals. Some are appropriate for education, some aren't. That's where the ethical review board will evaluate that AI tool and based on its pedagogical fit, its data privacy policies, and alignment with the institutional values. Critically, the board will establish data protection and student privacy safeguards. Students need to know that their hard work and their data isn't being exploited, and that their work isn't training for commercial models without their consent. Also, this is where what makes this, or how this comes together and what makes this work. The faculty expertise is integrated in the governance from the very start. This isn't administrators mandating AI from the top down. It's a collaborative decision-making approach that actually respects the faculty's knowledge and expertise. And this approach in my paper down there in my paper, we look at Georgieva and Stewart's framework, where they were inspired by the 1979 Belmont reports that established ethical review boards for biomedical research. They argue that the review board should be grounded in 8 established ethical principles, including benefits, justice, transparency, institutional governance, accountability, and alignment with the fundamental academic values. This moves universities from a reactive stance from policing to a proactive stance of governance, creating guardrails necessary for safe innovations. And the second part of the solution, we need custom coaching focused AI assistants, not generic chat GPT, but purpose built AI tools that are designed for education. These are coaching tools, not content generators. They ask questions, they prompt reflection, guide revisions. They don't do the work for the students. They help the students do better work. And they're course specific, not generic. Our own Wilmington University, the Willo project, was specific in this academic integrity scenarios, in its writing standards and its pedagogical approaches. These context sensitive is what made it effective in the pilot study. And then here's a critical design feature, the transparent chat logs that faculty can review. In the Willo pilot, professors could see the students' entire conversation with the AI Willo tool. And that created accountability on the students. Students knew faculty would see how they use the tool, and they were incentivized to use it for learning and not for shortcuts. This partnership model transformed the dynamic. Students weren't adversaries trying to cheat. They were partners using an approved tool transparently, and that shift the dynamics and that shift everything about the relationship. Willo's success illustrated what Murgatroyd identified as key challenges in adaptive learning and adaptive learning systems. Effective personalization required significant staff and time, subject-specific customization, with research showing generic platforms produce only marginal improvements over traditional instructions when they're poorly implemented. And you can see that here in my quote from my paper. And here's proof that this approach works. Students actually want this, and student buy-in is critical. And the data shows overwhelming support. Looking at the research, 93.9% of students found Willo easy to access and use. This isn't complicated technology that creates barriers. It's intuitive, it's accessible. 91.8 reported improvement in their writing quality. Students aren't using this to avoid their work. They're using it to do better work, and they are recognizing the value. And then 89%, 90% said it made their assignments easier to understand. And for many students, especially non-traditional adult learners, this tool provides just-in-time support they need to grasp complex concepts while juggling work and family responsibilities. 81.9% wish there was Willo used in more courses. And students aren't just satisfied, they're actually advocating for expanding the implementation. I can honestly say myself, being in the critical thinking class last semester and using Willo, it definitely was a benefit for me to understand, and actually helped me understand that my writing was extremely dense and improved the way that I was writing my papers, and helped me understand that better. So you can see student buy-in is there. Students want this. students are seeing this as not as cheating, but actually helping them be better students and grasp concepts. And then again, looking at that information from Dr. Walker's study that showed in detail these key points from his study. But beyond the numbers, let's look at what students actually said. And qualitative feedback is powerful. Learning partner that boosts confidence. Students consistently describe Willo as that learning partner, and it helped boost their confidence in school. They don't feel alone when facing difficult assignments. They have on-demand coaching support. Here's a quote that captures it perfectly. Refine work, not replace it. Students recognize that the tool isn't doing their thinking for them. It's helping them think better. And that's exactly what we want. And this one really matters. Students report seeing the value of AI tools used ethically by experiencing a well-designed tool in an academic context with oversight. Students are learning professional ethics, how to use powerful technology responsibly. That's a critical workforce skill. Multiple students mentioned that the tool reduces stress while enhancing learning. This is critical for adult learners, especially anything that makes education more efficient without sacrificing the quality. That's transformative. And that's really a key point I can personally attest to using Willo and being a student coming back to school after being out of school 25, 30 years in a very high demand job that I have working with executives. So that's critical right there. Again, looking at Dr. Walker's research about the Willo program, as he documents here the qualitative responses from the pilot study show that students aren't trying to game the system. Is students recognize that when AI is designed ethically and used transparently, it genuinely enhances their education experience. So, how do we actually implement this? We need a phased approach that allows learning and allows for adjustment. From the Ethical Review Board, together with faculty, admin, students, and technology experts, give them a real decision-making authority, not just adversary roles. The pilot can pilot the custom tool in select courses like we did here with Willo. Don't try to do everything at once. Start small, gather the data, refine based on what actually works. What does that look like from an investment? A 1-year pilot based on general numbers, it's approximately $25,000 to $60,000 for that first year. That covers faculty development, stipends, software subscription, API usage fees. It's not nothing, but it's modest. And the key is iterative refinement based on real world data. Don't set it up and forget it. Continuously improve based on how students and faculty are using the tool. That takes us back to the review board that constantly looks over these things and constantly looks at how the tool is being used and to be able to improvement. My analysis shows in a 1-year pilot leveraging existing AI platforms could be the 25 to 60,000 based on that general data, covering those personal expenses and developing the software and the API usage fees. While this represents a significant commitment, it's modest compared to the reputational and competitive costs that institutions are working with today. And I think it's a small fee to remain relevant in a job market where AI is integrated so heavily. Now, let's be clear about what's at stake. If institutions continue this paralysis, the cost of inaction is existential. Students graduate unprepared for an AI integrated workforce. They enter jobs not having the proficiency that the jobs require and expect, and they don't have it. The university failed to prepare them for this reality that they're walking into. Higher education loses relevance and competitive position when prospective students and their families are evaluating universities, because let's be honest, we all look at the universities that we're going to spend our money at. They'll ask, is this institution preparing me for the future, or are they stuck in the past? Institutions that refuse to adapt will lose enrollment. And then the best students, the most forward-thinking, ambitious students will choose institutions that embrace AI. Universities that ban AI will find themselves recruiting increasingly from students who either don't understand the technology landscape or can't get in anywhere else. And fourth, and perhaps most tragically, this is a missed opportunity to lead in educational innovation. Higher education has always been the forefront of social advancement, but if we're paralyzed while the corporate world and governments are adapting, then we're ceding that leadership role to other places. The stakes are clear, right? The university that refuses to adapt risks graduating students ill-equipped for the world that they're walking into, where it's a human AI collaboration is the norm. And while simultaneously losing the competitive position as prospective students choose other institutions that will get them ready for the real work successes, right? And this isn't hypothetical. This is happening right now, right in this landscape. Institutions must choose lead or become obsolete. So those here are the choices that these institutions are facing. Two paths: either prohibition or ethical partnership. The prohibition path: ban AI, ban it, and implementing detection tools, teaching students or treating students as adversaries. This leads to stagnation, irrelevance. It solves nothing and creates some core of massive problems. The ethical partnership approach: establish the ethical review boards, develop custom coaching tools, integrate faculty in their expertise in these coaching tools. All of this enables innovation. It acknowledges AI's transformative potential while insisting on careful evaluation and the ethical safeguards. And this here is fundamentally a choice between partnership model and policing model. Do we work with students and teachers in a collaborative learning environment and learning to use this powerful tool responsibly? Or do we treat them as potential criminals who want to cheat the system and need to be surveyed? The partnership model prepares students for the real world, which is, as we spoke about earlier in the presentation, that is really what the university is for, is to prepare students for the real world. And that's what we're trying to get to. That's actually what they're entering into, where AI has been absorbed and adapted. The policing model prepares them for nothing except for resentment, possibly for spending money and not getting the knowledge and information that they need at the academic institution. So again, from my research, as McDroid argues, learners must balance optimism and enthusiasm with realism and caution. I'm not talking about absorb AI without anything. We're talking about a balanced approach, not prohibiting it or not adopting it without any governance. The Ethical Review Board is the framework that embodies that balanced approach and that acknowledges AI's transformative potential while still having careful evaluation. The choice is clear. The question is whether the institutions have the courage to make it. So here's my call to action. Higher education must lead, not follow. Establish ethical review boards at every institution now, not next year, not when we figure everything out, but right now. Create the governance structure that allows you to evaluate AI tools systemically and make informed decisions. Invest in custom coaching tools. Don't use generic chat GPTs and the other generic AI tools. Don't just let students get away with using chat GPT and hope for the best. Build and adopt tools specifically designed for your organization, for your academic values, and that are designed for educational outcomes. And with transparency, the accountability is already built in. Involve faculty. It's crucial and critical that faculty must be involved in a meaningful governance. And this can't be an administrative mandate from top down. It has to be a collaborative approach. We have to respect their expertise and include them in the decision making. And most importantly, lead educational transformation. Don't follow. Higher education has always been where society looks for its guidance and complex ethical questions. Be worthy of that trust. Shape how AI is integrated into learning and react to what others decide. Rather than react to what others decide. The bottom line, while this approach requires significant investment in both financial resources and a cultural change, the cost of inaction is far higher. Those institutions that develop ethical frameworks now will be positioned to lead rather than follow. Empirical evidence from our own Wilmington University's Willo pilot is clear. Responsibility and responsible AI integration is not only possible, but beneficial. Students' critical thinking improves, their writing improves, their confidence improves, and they learn professional skills that they'll have for the rest of their lives. The question isn't whether higher education will integrate AI. The question is whether we'll do it thoughtfully or reactively. Those that choose this thoughtful path will define the future of learning itself. So, what does it all mean for the future of higher education? The evidence is clear. Prohibition, it doesn't protect the students. It harms them. Detection doesn't prevent cheating. It damages trust. Fear doesn't preserve academic integrity. It creates institutional paralysis. What works is an ethical reformation, governance structure that provides oversight, custom tools designed for coaching, not content generation, and partnerships that treat students like collaborators rather than adversaries. The professional world has already moved on. They already have adopted. The question is whether higher education will catch up or whether we'll continue to graduate students unprepared for the reality of the world that they're entering. I believe we can do better. I believe institutions like our own Wilmington University, with leaders like Dr. Walker and Dr. Branch, are showing us a path forward. And I believe that when we embrace AI and we embrace it ethically and intentionally, we don't diminish education, we elevate it. The choice is ours. Let's choose wisely. Thank you, English 122. Thank you for anyone watching this, and thank you for enjoying and watching the inaugural episode of the Jay Johnson Show, The Prompt. Have a good evening and good night.